Oh, hello. This is my first post here. I'm not sure if this is the right place to talk about this, but I hope it is, and I'm already doing it. I was very recently hired as a security guard at an old Inca fortress in Bolivia, at the top of a mountain, something around 2,000 meters of altitude. It's an archaeological site, and during the week it functions as a museum too. Today was my first day, although it was more of like a video game tutorial. My supervisor, Senorita Rivera, spent almost the entire day guiding me through the installations, telling me how to properly answer common asked questions, and introducing me to my colleagues at the Guadria, the security station of the place. At the end, she weirdly asked me if I had ever seen something unnatural. I replied I hadn't. She gave me the key for the basement of the Guadria, to which she referred to as the safe room. When I asked why did we need that if we were already at a safe place, she gave me a new manual, said farewell, and left. When I arrived at my home, I work from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. In my house, I'm currently living in a city at a distance of about 5 kilometers from the mountain. I checked the manuals my supervisor gave me. The first was the safety rules, which I had already read when I applied for the job. The second was an informational guide to the ruins. It was mostly a frequently asked questions that contained the same questions she explained to me during the day. The third is the reason why I'm writing this. It's called Special Security Measurements. It looks like a dull and old book, differently from the first ones, which contained illustrations and random photos from the archaeological site. It has no cover art. It smells like mold and probably was made with a typewriter. Well, nobody said I couldn't share it. There's nothing like that in my contract, on the book, or told to me by my supervisor. I transcribed the rules and translated it from Spanish for you guys. Special Security Measurements. Rule 0. Write address in paper and leave it on the table in the Guadria. Number 1. As a security guard, you were instructed to detain people who vandalize the patrimony on spot. However, this doesn't apply to the Guadria. If you see someone vandalizing the Guadria, ask for their ID. If it says Special Curators Personnel, you're obliged to ask them no further questions and go to another location of the museum. Number 2. The safe room key is to be considered your most precious belonging. Maintain it with you at all times. At home, find a secret place to put them, like under the bed mattress or in a random envelope in the trash can. Do not, by any means, leave it in a safe or inside your wallet when you're at home. Change the secret location at least once every week. Number 3. If you notice the disappearance of the key, do not panic. Call your supervisor and follow their instructions. Number 4. The safe room must be locked at all times. It should only be opened if required or in extreme emergencies. By no means should you try to enter it to satisfy your curiosity or by any other reason other than an emergency. Number 5. If you see a man with a suit, sunglasses, and a fedora or top hat, politely ask his name. If he answers one of the following: John Doe, Duke's Personnel, Celeste Personnel, Specialized Curators Personnel, ask him if he needs any assistance and do what he commands. Then contact your supervisor. If he doesn't give you any of the described names, then tell him to leave. He should follow your instructions. If he doesn't, go to the safe room immediately and contact your supervisor. Number 6. If you see a group of kids wearing clothes that look very old and dusty, ask them where their parents are. If they don't answer, close the section of the museum, call your supervisor, and go to the safe room. Await further instruction. Number 7. When you leave the Guadria, always double check if the windows are closed. Number 8. Don't use the bathroom at the entrance of the museum between 14:30 and 16:15. Number 9. The ruins of the Inquisition outpost must be avoided at night. Number 10. You must not speak Spanish inside the safe room. Number 11. Do not stay at work after 9 p.m. If you happen to be there after this specific time, go to the safe room as silently as you can. Avoid using technological devices like radios, television, VHS films, etc. there. Number 12. Do not bring any book written by Spanish people from the 16th and 17th century to the job. Number 13. Never go into the wilderness alone. Ever. Number 14. There are always exactly 1 supervisor, 4 security guards, 12 janitors, 2 historians, and 3 persons selling tickets to the museum. If you see anyone with staff clothing that you don't recognize, call your supervisor. Do not, by any means, invite them to the Quadrilla until you have confirmed they are museum personnel. This rule doesn't apply to the archaeological team if they happen to be there. Number 15. The pit was an ancient underground tunnel used to evacuate the fortress by the Inca. That being said, you should avoid entering it, unless under extreme circumstances. If you happen to enter it, by any reason, go back. You will only be able to be in the pit safely if you are of Inca descendancy. Number 16. There is not a night watch, even if they wear authentic uniform and seem to be familiar with the place. If you are greeted by a night watch when leaving or when arriving, contest with gibberish, close the museum, and get out. Call the supervisor immediately. Number 17. Sometimes a Rule 0 shows up in this manual. Ignore it. Number 18. If you are in the place where the ancient Inca performed sacrifices and see people dressed in indigenous clothing, acting in a weird manner, close the section and go to the safe room immediately. Number 19. Avoid drinking cocoa tea or masticating cocoa after 7 p.m. inside the Quadrilla. Number 20. If you see someone you recognize from historical paintings or with clothing completely incompatible to the time period, ask for their citizen ID. Depending on the reply, accompany the person to the exit of the museum or leave them alone. Number 21. When going down the mountain, you may see that Vineyard Santo Amaro is open. There is no danger going there, but avoid staying there after 10 p.m. The vendor sometimes is attractive. Do not accept any requests to give them a ride home or to stay with them during the night at Santa Amaro Pudusa. There's only a vineyard and a wine shop there. Number 22. On the wall of the Quadrilla, there are photos of every one of the employees of the site, including one of you. If it goes missing, contact your supervisor immediately and do not leave the Quadrilla. 23. If you hear someone calling your name around 1830, don't answer. Go to the Quadrilla and wait for it to end. Number 24. Twice per year, a bizarre, tall, and completely white alien-like creature will stalk you. The first time, you will randomly spot it at a minimum of 7 meters from you, probably standing still. It will walk slowly toward you. Don't go to the safe room or contact the supervisor. Go to a random cemetery outside the mountain and bury your clothes there. Don't tell anyone about it. The second time should occur between 3 and 5 months after the original incident, even if you're not working with us anymore. You will wake up with the creature at the corner of your room, and it will be standing still like a statue. It doesn't breathe or move, but don't be fooled by it. Within 7 days, you must pray in 7 different churches, even if you're an atheist. If this doesn't work, get as far from your home as you can and stay there for 7 more days. Number 25. You may meet people you thought were dead sometimes. If this happens, don't talk to them and go to the safe room. Stay there for 1 hour and it should be safe. Number 26. If one of your colleagues asks for a ride home, decline. Unless it's the janitor of the 3rd section, then accept. Number 27. Avoid looking into the ruins of the 3rd Inca house in the 9th sector for more than 2 minutes, even if you feel obligated to or someone tells you to do it. Number 28. Orbs are sometimes seen flying around. If the orb is blue, ignore it. If it is orange, close the section. If it is dark or red, go to the safe room and call your supervisor. Number 29. Never talk about these rules outside the cuadrilla if you are not with at least 2 other guards nearby. Number 30. If you feel a sudden need to speak or sing in languages you don't know, resist and do not speak at all. Send a telegraph or a letter to your supervisor asking for help. Number 31. If you find anything unnatural that is not listed here, close the section where it's happening, call your supervisor immediately, then go to the safe room. Alright, a lot of people asked me to keep them updated on whatever happened. At first I thought nothing even remotely scary would happen. I was still thinking this was probably a messed up prank from my supervisor or my colleagues. Sadly, that was proven not to be the case. Yesterday was my 2nd day at work. I met my other colleagues and some of the other staff members. The first one I talked to was Samir. He's the security guard that takes care of the entrance and Section 1. The museum is distant of everything and at the top of a mountain, so we don't get lots of visitors. I'd estimate today we had about 500 individuals. So each security guard patrols 2 sections, but no one patrols the 9th section. I don't know why. Anyway, Samir is from Bolivia, but his parents are from India. He's a quiet guy, but seems to be nice, and was very kind to me. The second person I met was Victoria. She's a nice woman who seems to be in her 50s. She spends the entire day, when not actually working, playing Candy Crush. The third and last of the security guards that aren't me is Hector. He's in his 60s and has a tired voice. He's the only one of us that does not consume cocoa and seems to be addicted to smoking. The others I met were the janitors. I think there are 12 of them, 3 for each sector, except Section 9. I don't know why there are so many of them. The whole point of ruins is to see ruined places, and they don't do a lot of things apart from collecting the trash of the trash cans, but who am I to complain? Oddly enough, there are 12 janitors. I didn't see one of the janitors of the 6th section during the entire day. I mean, even the picture of him in the cuadrilla is empty. They have one for each employee. So, let's get started. I arrived around 9:45. Only Hector was there, smoking his cigarette at the entrance. When I approached to greet him, he said, "I know what you want to talk about. Not now. Wait until noon. It's usually the safest time." I got a little confused, but he tapped my shoulder and offered me a cigarette. "No thanks. I quit 2 years ago." "I sell medical tranquilizers and relaxing substances if you'd like also. Just talk to me if you need anything." "Wait, you smuggle drugs in here?" "Yeah, but supervisor literally orders me to do it. Most of the staff wouldn't be able to work without being calmed by something. I myself included in this category." In that moment, a car parked next to us, and Samir calmly got out of it. "Hey, what are you guys doing?" he asked, as he masticated a piece of cacao. "We're waiting for the supervisor to open the entrance, like we do every day," Hector said. "Why? Don't you guys have keys to the entrance?" I said. "Of course I do, but it's usually safer when we wait for her." I tried to ask why, but they evaded every question related to why this so-called safety was. After 15 more minutes, another car arrived. Our supervisor got out of it, with a blank expression. "Javier," In my office, in 5 minutes, she said as she entered the ruins. Senora, it isn't 10 a.m. yet, Hector said with a cough in his voice. She ignored him. I immediately went to her office. It's a small cabin just at the side entrance. Her waiting room had various Inca decorations, a falsified deer head on the wall, and a security desk, which was empty. I tried to open the door to her office, but it was locked. She told me to wait. After 5 minutes or so, she opened the door. I immediately went to her office. The actual office was far simpler than the waiting room. It actually seemed like an interrogation room. Small, with no windows, a ventilator on the ceiling, and just a closed laptop on her table. She looked at me like she wanted to burn me alive. Javier, did you violate Rule 29? Oh, I don't know, Senora Rivera. Shit. Then you've already caught their attention. Okay. Listen, Javier. Pay 10 times the attention you were giving to the rules before. For your own sake. Madam, if this is a joke, I'd like to say I'm not enjoying it. No one enjoys it. Please, be safe, Javier. We can't afford to lose another employee. You're acting just like your predecessor, and that didn't end up well for him. Senora, what happened to my predecessor? Well, I think maybe you should see for yourself. She opened a drawer in the table and took out a binder, which she put on the table. Francesco Cagaras, 28 years, guard of Section 7 and 8. Disobeyed Rule 29 2 times. He talked to his family about the special security measurements and to his neighbor. Violated number 19 several times. Violated 9 once. Once, because he disappeared. We found him 3 days later. She showed me the register of the violations. Was he okay? No. We found half of his body at the base of the mountain, impaled on a tree. We have not found his legs yet. His eyes and heart were removed. Now, do you understand what you're getting yourself into? She handed me a print of my first post at Reddit. The error is that not that you posted this on Reddit. The error is that you did it without any colleagues nearby or outside the Cuadria. Please, avoid violating security measurements. You can go now. I didn't know what to say, although my mind was riddled with questions and more questions. So I just left when she opened the door. Now, the rest of the day was almost completely fine. Almost. I afforded to work, even with the questions plaguing my head. In the lunch, no one wanted to answer them, not even Hector. The event which is worth taking note of happened around 1945. I was only 15 minutes away from leaving, and the museum was already closed for an hour. I was watching one random Bolivian soap opera in the ancient TV of the Cuadria when the signal started to fail. I tried to put the antennas right again, but couldn't. Victoria had already left. Hector and Samir were not there at the time, so I had nobody to help me fix the signal at that time. Damn, I said while going back to my seat, when I heard Victoria calling me outside. You should know that, due to the high altitude of the Bolivian mountains, even a whisper can be heard from several meters distance. I left the Cuadria, going after the voice of my colleague. After 2 minutes of walking in the obscure and old Inca ruins, my phone rang. Kiddo, what are you doing? Said Hector from the other side of the line. Victoria called me. I'm going to see what she wants. I answered while I walked. From some distance, I saw the pit. I think she got trapped inside the pit, I said to him. You moron. Haven't you read Directive 23? Come back to the Cuadria now. But what if Victoria... Victoria left early, you moron. For God's sake, come back already. He was screaming at the cell phone so loudly I could hear his voice echoing in the Cuadria. I then stared at the pit. One slender and long arm came out of it and waved at me. I tried to run, but I was so shocked I couldn't. I just kept staring, confused and terrorized. And then I heard a step behind me. I slowly turned around. I saw what looked like one of the Spanish conquistadors from the 16th century. But his face was horrifying. It was completely deformed and seemed putrid. His clothing was old, dusty, and falling apart. His eyes were completely black. He just stood still and smiled, revealing hundreds of teeth that weren't even supposed to fit in his mouth. I didn't even stop at the Quadrilla. I ran to my car and got out of there as soon as I could, looking back every 5 seconds to see if something was following me. But nothing happened. The path down the mountain was a long and scary one, as I was completely alone and the only light on the road were from my car lanterns. Not even the moon was there that night. I stopped at my home, locked all the doors and windows, and laid on my bed. I couldn't sleep with the light turned off that night. The only thing that made me feel safe was the sound of cars outside my home and dogs barking in the neighborhood. I'm posting this at work now, as my supervisor instructed, because I have to open up with someone, and my colleagues refuse to talk to me about it. I spent almost my entire free time today reading the rules again and again. I'm thinking about resigning this goddamn job, like many of you suggested, but I have to work at least 10 more days according to my contract. Wish me luck. I'll keep you updated. Wow, so much has been going on, and I thought I was in a calm job. Well, I've made my decision. I'll be quitting when I reach day 10. Hector and the others said it's not uncommon. They're already veterans. They've seen lots of people coming in and out. Victoria has been here for 7 years. Samir, I think 5 or something. Hector has been in here for at least 20. I asked Senora Rivera how long she's been here, and she said for me to mind my own business. The janitors seem to be immune for all of this. All of them have been here for well more than 10 years. I mean, except for the one from the 5th section that I didn't get to meet. Getting to the point, around 1500 of the 3rd day, I got curious about Section 9. It's not very far from my patrol areas, so I stretched my legs and went there. The sun was still in the sky, so I thought this shouldn't be very scary. And apart from that, I'm a security guard, checking if everything was alright is part of my job, right? At least, that was the reason I gave myself to exploring this haunted place. Well, Section 9 is where the dining hall of the Incas and their kitchens were located. There, where I'd estimate 6 or 7 visitors at the place, reading the information posters and taking photos. Behind the ruins, there was a small forest and a beautiful view of the mountains. Surprisingly, the section was very clean. Their trash cans caught my attention. They were not modern at all. They had a 1950s vibe, and I don't think anyone, apart from collection fanatics, had such preserved old trash cans. They're impressive, right? I heard a slow-paced female voice coming from behind me. As I got up and turned around, I saw that all the tourists had left. The only person with me in the section was an old lady who I had not seen before. She wore those multicolored, traditional Bolivian clothing and was holding a cacao leaf in her hand. "Excuse me, lady," I said, a bit confused. No way she could get here that fast. Her bones seemed like they could barely sustain her anymore, and her skin seemed almost like one could pull her out of it. She smiled. There was not a single tooth in her mouth. "You're the new guard, right?" "Javier Nanosca, from Paraguay." "My husband was a commander in the Chaco War." "Madam, the Chaco War was in the early 1930s. "And how do you know my name?" "Who are you?" I shouted, using the wrath to hide my fear. It's so sad you couldn't bring your wife too.
Don't you dare talk about her.
Don't be rude, boy. Oh, you may have just awoken my husband. You'll love to meet him, she said, laughing. Then I heard footsteps coming up from the forest.
Fuck off,
I shouted. By that point, fed up with all those occurrences, and turned around, planning on going back to my section, from where I should have never left first. However, as I was walking away, I couldn't help but take one last look behind. Damn curiosity who keeps dooming me. The lady had disappeared, but in her place, a man who seemed even older than her came out of the woods, carrying large trash bags. He was completely naked, dirty, and his face and neck were covered in blood. "Hello, Javier," he said, smiling and revealing his rotten, yellowed teeth. "I've brought you a welcome gift." He put the bags on the ground and, walking backwards, went back into the woods without ever breaking eye contact with me. The bags' smell were awful. I opened them. I stood there, paralyzed. I was too scared to do anything. I wish that encounter wasn't true, that I was just hallucinating or daydreaming. That wish was killed by the gruesome reality. One of the janitors saw me in that catatonic state and called the other guards to help me. 1 hour later, the police arrived. They took the bag, interrogated several people, not the guards though, and left as fast as they could. I accommodated myself in a chair in the Guadria, drinking hot chocolate and trembling, watching Victoria and Samir discussing who could have done that monstrosity. Hector was silently smoking a suspicious cigarette as he looked out the window. "It's the second time a staff member died gruesomely since the beginning of the year," shouted Samir, clearly nervous. "We are the next ones." "Oh, shut up, Samir. He's the next one. We're safe," Victoria said. "They started getting more gruesome way before the newbie arrived. We had almost 20 deaths last year. Rivera said the registers say there were only 3 to 5 per year in the early 2000s. Soon even the guests will be in danger." "What is this?" I asked, already getting a bit nervous. "What?" Victoria asked. "What is doing this? This isn't normal. Is it a ghost? A demon? What the hell is happening in these goddamn ruins?" I shouted. "It's better if we don't talk about it," Samir said, visibly afraid. "Javier, meet me in the cafeteria San Jose tomorrow morning. I'll explain some things to you," Hector said as he finished his joint. Then he put on his coat and left the Guadria. Just then I realized it was 1955. Time to go home. The road home was even longer than the day before. This time, the road, worse than having no illumination at all, was completely foggy and cold. Sometimes I saw shadows getting closer and looming over the car, getting closer more and more. I promised myself when I finished my 10-day contract, I'd never go back up that mountain again. When I arrived at home, I checked my broken mailbox. The safe room key was there. I changed its location that night. That night was particularly intense. I couldn't sleep. I looked obsessively at the windows in the bedroom and the bathroom doors. Nothing happened, apart from one picture of me and my ex-wife falling to the floor and having its glass frame broken due to the wind. I threw the thing in the trash anyway. I don't know why I kept it. I'm writing this at 6 a.m. I'm supposed to meet with Hector in 1 hour. Cafeteria is just 2 streets away. I hope he helps me deal with whatever is going on. The cafeteria had opened exactly 5 minutes before. The place was completely empty. Well, almost. Alone in the table most distant to the balcony sat Hector, with a Panama hat and a cigarette in his hand. On the table lied a large binder, on the side of a cup of coffee. "Good morning, Javier. Please, take a seat," he said loudly. "I hope this is worth my time, Hector. I'm not going to become your drug partner if that's the reason you called me." "Well?" He opened the binder, revealing pages of a local newspaper. As he spoke, he turned the pages and showed me different articles, each one older than its predecessor. Venezuelan tourist found beheaded at ancient Inca fortress. Now, look at this other one. Museum curator killed in fatal accident, 1957. And another one from 1906. Couple found dead in ancient Inca fortress. Their bodies were sliced up into several parts. The oldest newspaper on these cases I found is from a sensationalist British tabloid from 1882. This one's pretty graphic. A 7-month pregnant woman used a knife to remove her fetus, still alive, and threw him into the pit. She died from blood loss. I've collected an ancient photography from the corpse in the city's library. God, that's gross. I looked away when he tried to show me the picture. But this is not the end, Javier. You know why the Spaniards came all the way up to build that Inquisition outpost? The ruins were already haunted when they came along. It was first used for sacrifices by the Inca. In fact, even before the Inca Empire was formed, the first settlement up in the mountain was around 300 Common Era by the native people. Hector, I haven't come here for a history lesson. Please, tell me already what's going on. He took a deep breath with his cigarette before answering. I would tell you if I knew, but I'll just say this seems to be an ancient evil force. A demon, maybe, or worse. In the 16th century, an Inquisition outpost was established there and stayed there for 7 years. They killed a lot of residents before they realized whatever is up there was using them to bring death. They left, and the Catholic Church has refused to go up there ever since. He took another deep breath before continuing. However, roaming into the museum's files some years ago, I discovered the head inquisitor, before leaving, had written a complete analysis on the demon. I believe that if we can find the paper, we'll be dealing with whatever's happening. I need your help to do that. How would I even do that, Hector? Why would I want to mess with this goddamn demon? He causes me enough headaches. Because you have no choice, Javier. You already caught his attention. He already knows you fear him. There's no escaping now. He'll follow you. You know why the church is so afraid of him? Every single one of the inquisitors was brutally killed in the following months after they left, even those who went back to Spain or Rome. Damn. Okay. What do I need to do? Where do I find this Inquisition analysis? It was taken by the previous supervisor, Senor Ramon, 17 years ago. You'll have to get into our supervisor's office and search for it. Should be in her archive. So you'll have to stay here until after she leaves, at 20:30. Fuck, I'd be dead. Why don't you do it? Because I already tried years ago, on my lunch break. She discovered me and took my key to her office. You're the only one I trust enough to do it. Victoria's too distraught, and Samir doesn't get along very well with me. No one, other than her or the guards, has the key to her office. All right, Hecker, I'll do it. But tell me, why are you investigating the demon? How have you worked there so long without being affected? Where do you get all your drugs? How do you know so much about the murders? I'm starting to believe you just might as well be the freaking demon. Keep your mouth shut, you fucking moron! Everybody's looking at us now. Look, I'm not a demon, I'm just smart. Just obey the rules and you'll be fine. But because you insist so much... He handed me a card and then left the cafeteria without paying or saying anything. Yeah, I ended up paying for his coffee. I looked at the card he gave me. Field Agent Hector S. Medina, Class B, Clearance Level 4. I have no idea what anything of that means. I googled it, but it didn't correspond to any Interpol or Bolivian police force. Maybe he's a spy? Hector didn't come to work today. I came to work using my bicycle and already hit it. This will avoid her seeing my car and figuring out why I'm here. It was tiring, but I liked the exercise. I didn't leave my section. There also wasn't any weird events that happened today. I followed the rules by the book. I didn't want anything to happen. When the end of my shift began to approach, I started wondering if I should really do it. I mean, Hector is probably a super spy and knows this kind of stuff, but I don't think I can trust him yet. Maybe he's trolling me. Maybe he's just hallucinating because of the drugs. I don't really know. Oh, and don't worry, I blocked my boss on Reddit. This will stop her from seeing this post, right? I hope so, at least. It's almost 20:30. Samuel just left, and Victoria left some 30 minutes ago. I'm still deciding if I'll do what Hector has told me to do or not. Oh, all the energy's down. She turns it off when she leaves. I think I hear her car turning on. I can hear it going down the road and leaving. Shit. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm all alone up here now. I've already double-checked my flashlight for batteries. I've already separated the office key from the others. I think I'm ready to go in there. I'll search her office. After that, I'll run to the safe room and stay locked in there until Hector arrives, or something. I won't be able to leave with my bicycle in complete darkness. I think I can trust you. So I'll ask you, do you think I should do what Hector told me to? I don't think I can change my plan now. When the midnight came, I was still in my supervisor's office, looking for the Inquisition paper Hector told me about yesterday. I heard the church bells, telling me it was day 5. In 5 more, I'd be leaving this goddamn place. But then I remembered. There was no church here anymore. The last one closed in the 17th century, after the Inquisitors left. The church had been in ruins for at least the last 400 years. What the hell? I said. I opened the office's window's curtains and looked out the window. The fortress cathedral was suddenly rebuilt. I could see its tall bell tower from the little cabin. There was someone ringing its bell. I tried to get a better look. That's when I saw a small group of monks coming toward the cabin's direction with torches in their hands. I immediately closed the windows. I needed to find the Inquisition paper as soon as I could. I started throwing open all of the archives drawers as fast as I could. Most of the files I came across were random documents about the museum's employees, contracts and taxes, visitors' records. I couldn't find anything about the Inquisition. I heard someone knocking on the door of the cabin. I had to hurry. I went like a madman, throwing everything around and looking for the paper. Then I heard the cabin's door opening. They were in the waiting room. I hurried to the office's door and locked it with the key. Hearing them knocking on the other side, they were shouting in heavy, accented Spanish, and some of them also in what seemed to be Latin. I grabbed one of the archives and threw it in front of the door, and threw one of the chairs in front of the window. I noticed that, in my hurry, I had knocked down my supervisor's computer, shattering it to several pieces. Shit, I whispered, until I saw, in the innards of the computer, a file. I took it and immediately opened it. The whole thing was full of dust and dirt. It looked like it had been inside the computer for ages. Diabolici spiritus ab samipata. This was written on the document's cover, along with an illustration of what looked like a demon wearing Inca clothing and holding torches. It had a lot of pages. "Open up," I heard them say from outside of the door, and I noticed they were trying to break the door. I didn't know what to do, so I opened the window and jumped through it. I fell into a small amount of bushes, and as fast as I could, I ran toward the security shack without looking back. I fell about 10 times and ended up with several bruises, but I did it. I entered the security cabin and locked the door as fast as I could. Through the window, I saw the church tower and the monks walking around. They were not following me as far as I could see. I realized I had dropped my flashlight somewhere when I was running, but I didn't know where exactly. If that wasn't enough, I could only power up the shack by activating the energy system, which was located outside. I had no option but to spend the night in complete darkness. I didn't want to go into the safe room just yet. It was too dark to do it, and I had no clue what I'd find in there. Maybe if I sat down on one of the chairs and waited for the dawn, I'd be fine. As the manual said, I just needed to keep quiet. That's why I almost had a heart attack when, after 10 or 15 minutes of complete silence and darkness, the ancient television turned on and started showing me a bizarre black and white film on maximum volume. I'm not kidding, I literally fell to the floor, feeling one of the worst pains I've ever experienced in my chest. I started vomiting and struggling to breathe, but I couldn't. I eventually got better, but felt very, very tired. The TV was still on. The movie was a really old documentary about the fortress, showing a group of American researchers filming the place and talking about its history. I knew I had to turn the thing off, or whoever was outside would hear me, but I was just too tired to move, so I just stayed there watching. The movie went on for some minutes more, and I realized that it didn't make any sense, because the shack had no energy. The documentary started talking about the folklore of the fortress and its surroundings, and the researchers were having a conversation about the pit. I finally got up and slowly walked towards the television, still feeling my heart struggling. I guess smoking for almost 20 years didn't help me at all. I pressed the button to turn it off, but nothing happened. Actually, something happened, but it wasn't good. The movie started showing the filmmakers mutilating themselves with rocks they'd found on the floor. I almost threw it up again. I won't describe it here, but that was probably the most awfully horrible thing I've ever seen, and that's coming from someone who once worked as a janitor in a hospital. I threw the television on the floor, destroying it and stopping the movie, but then I heard footsteps outside, coming in the shack's direction. I unlocked the safe room and entered it, and then locked the door again. It was a very small room, completely white, illuminated by an enormous candle, and with a chair in the middle. The walls were completely covered with religious symbols and historic sigils. I sat on the chair and waited. I could hear them entering the cabin and looking for me. They were ripping the place apart, but for some reason weren't finding the safe room. After some tense 30 or 40 minutes, they left. I could hear the monks leaving and talking about where to look for me next. I knew they weren't coming back so soon, but was too terrified to move, and ended up sleeping on the chair after some hours, paralyzed by the fear. I woke up the following day with Hector slapping me in the face. "I've risked my life coming to work early to see if you were okay. Don't tell me you didn't find the paper," he said with a cigarette in his mouth. "I found it. Here it is," I said as I gave it to him. "What time is it, Hector?" 9:30, he said, looking at his phone. "Shit, we have to organize the cabin before the others arrive." I got up and entered the main room, but the place was completely fine. Even the TV was there, in its normal place. Don't worry. They put everything they find in the wrong place back in its original place every night. Somehow they even fix things. That's why everything in the cabin hasn't changed position in more than 20 years, he said as he looked into the Inquisition document. Then how can I still have the paper? Because for some reason they can't enter the safe room. At least, not all of them. Can any of them enter the safe room? The stalker somehow gets to go anywhere he wants. Who? The stalker. I think he's described in Special Rule 24 or 25. Anyway, I don't need your help anymore, at least not for now. I'll tell you when you're needed. Wait, you must tell me who you are. What is this place? Well, it's difficult to explain. I work for a pretty big international agency. We secure places, contain paranormal creatures, and protect the world. Or at least we try to. 2 or 3 seconds after he finished saying that, we heard a car arrive. This must be Samir, Hector said as he put the folder in his bag and exited the shack. The day following that was pretty normal, with only one weird occurrence. I initially had a hard time keeping awake, but after 1 or 2 cups of coffee, I managed to do it. The supervisor arrived at 10:15 and went straight to her cabin. Don't worry, they'll probably have reorganized everything in there, Hector told me as we watched her enter and divided a cup of cocoa tea. That wasn't true. She went out of her cabin less than 1 minute later and, with what seemed like a worried or angry face, I started sweating when I saw her coming straight into my direction. I haven't done anything, I said when she approached. Yeah, that's pretty stupid, but I've never been very smart or stoic. I was lucky she didn't listen to me because she had earphones in her ears. Hector, Protocol S-1, she said as she removed the earphones. Already? He said, kind of worried. Yes, he's here. As she said this, I noticed her cabin's door was opening behind her, and I heard footsteps coming in her direction. She handed a key to him. Here's the key. You know the rules. Just check the computer. Everything's in there. The password is Samipata68, she said as she ran into her car and left. I saw footsteps appearing in the trail of her tires. What was that, Hector? That, Javier, is the stalker. I guess I'm your supervisor for the following days. Now, let me organize myself in her cabin, he said as he entered it. It's 1949 now. I'm writing this in the security room. I just received a message from Hector. He said I received a letter in my house and I needed to check it out. When I get home, I'll see what it is, and I'll keep you updated. Yesterday I was pretty surprised when I came home to find 2 letters under my door. One was considerably more expensive than the other, with even that weird red thing they used to seal letters in the past. The other was mostly just a folder and was probably delivered manually by the one who sent it. I looked first into the cheap letter. It had a weird symbol of a circle with arrows or something, a message, and also what seemed like a contract. I'll transcribe it. Thank you for your help getting us the Inquisition document. As a retribution for all your trouble in achieving this task, we are giving you 5,500 bolivios and an invitation to join our organization as a C-class due to your experience with security. If you are interested, go to Santa Cruz La Vieja after your 10-day contract in the Samapata ruins is finished and go to the following address. Sorry, I won't put the address here for security reasons. Asked to talk to Professor Arnaldo Celeste. The expensive one had a symbol of an anthropomorphic head on its seal. I opened it. It was written in seemed like pen and smelly red ink. We can work together to bring her back. Meet me in the pit. Don't tell Hector or I'll come after you. Check your broken mailbox. Well, that letter was certainly scary, but I couldn't help myself. I opened my broken mailbox. In the middle of its dust lay a photo, and seemed to have been taken by Polaroid. It was the photo of an abandoned school bus on the side of the road. Even with me being tired as hell, I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't want to share very personal details before now, but Now it's unavoidable. Whatever lives up in that mountain is now toying with me, using my past to torment me. In the year of, if I remember correctly, 2006, I moved from Paraguay to Bolivia with my wife. We had to leave Paraguay due to safety reasons. Her grandfather was a secret police officer and torturer from Strauss dictatorship in the 70s and 80s. When this was all revealed in 2004, all members of her family started being harassed by the press and later by the EPP, a socialist guerrilla from Paraguay. We married in 2003, so I started being harassed too. In early 2006, they shot her parents. Her mother suffered from stomach and lung perforations. If her stomach fluid didn't leak out of her body, she'd be dead. Her father wasn't as lucky. 3 bullets, 1 in the neck, shoulder, and 1 in the brain. He's still in the hospital. This was the reason we needed to flee Paraguay. We bought a small but comfortable house in the rural and also outside of the small city of Samipata. It was a city mainly dedicated to tourism and viniculture, with only about 4,800 inhabitants. I worked several different jobs: security guard, bus driver, car mechanic, construction worker. In Paraguay, my wife previously worked as a substitute teacher until she was fired when her grandpa's secrets were revealed. In Bolivia, she managed to get a job as a primary teacher. It was a good life. I really miss it. In July of 2012, she went to a 3-day excursion with her students and 2 other teachers to Cerro Potosí. They never made it there. The police searches lasted several weeks, and detectives kept coming into my house, asking questions until 2017, when the case was closed. Not a single body was found, but now I could know where she was. I entered my car and drove up the mountain immediately. It was 11 p.m., but I didn't care. I still didn't have a flashlight, so I brought a lighter with me. When I arrived at the ruins, they were just like last night, completely empty and dark. Except they weren't empty. At the entrance, 6 or 7 hooded figures with candles in their hands were looking at me. I ignored them, entered, and went straight to the pit. All along the way, there were more and more hooded figures, and the bell tower was also back, but by that point, I was beyond giving a damn. The pit had a red carpet, and I think there were at least 20 of those hooded candle people at its sides. They were all singing in a language I didn't understand. The pit was not in ruins anymore. Its ancient stairs were back, and there were torches in the walls. I walked down the stairs for what I think 5 to 10 minutes. The hooded people were coming behind me, still singing. There were at least 100 of them in total. At the end of the stairs, there was an underground cave, with rivers, waterfalls, golden Inca statues, and at the center of everything, a golden throne, with piles, piles, and more piles of skeletons and bodies by its side. Sitting on the throne was an old man, dressed with an Inca emperor's clothing, but instead of gold and silver, they were made completely of rotten flesh and skin. "Welcome, Javier." I saw his mouth opening, but his voice wasn't coming from everywhere. I looked back and saw that the hooded people were all kneeling behind me. It was a deep, weird, old man voice. What are you?" I asked, looking straight into his eyes. Well, where his eyes were supposed to be. They were just 2 black holes with a weird black liquid dropping from them, like he was crying. "I am forgotten now, but if you had come 400 or so years earlier, everyone would know who I am. But now I am forgotten. Not only forgotten, but someone is covering me up. This annoys me. You see, in the good old days, the Inca feared me so much they would appease me. They would bring sacrifices to me. I had one soul per week, and now I'm lucky if I can bring a person per lunar period. I had a good life. I missed that time. But do you feed on their souls? No, I'm immortal. Then why are you doing all this? You've killed thousands of people. Why do you need your wife and son? You've been living fine without her for 7 years. You're still able to eat, sleep, or breathe without her. Why aren't you happy like you were when you came to my city? Because she made me happy. That's why I need those sacrifices, son. We're not so different. We just require different forms of happiness. Living forever is pretty boring if you don't find a hobby. But why did you call me out here? You want me to bring people for you to kill? No, I want to tell you where your wife is. She's alive? She's alive, I asked, almost shouting. If you call that living. At the Quadria, you'll find a paper with the address. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't even know your name. Call me Supe, son. And one other thing. I might want something in return. Bring your wife here tomorrow night. I'll be waiting for you. I ran to the Quadria as fast as I could, without even looking back. I got the paper with the address, entered my car, and hit the road. The journey is a long one. It lasts 8 hours. I'm riding this at a gas station on the way, while I have lunch. I'll keep you updated. I arrived at the address, nervous as hell. I drank so much coffee I don't even remember half the way. I'm also pretty sure I got fined 2 or 3 times for exceeding the speed limit, and I may have run over a cyclist, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I know, I probably committed some crimes, but by that point, I didn't care. I just needed to see my wife. The place mentioned in the message was an arid and extremely isolated place in a side road of a side road. Now, my car is not a 4x4, and I had a hard time driving there, but I did it. It was arid, but not a desert. It still had some trees. 200 or 300 meters into this forest, there was a seemingly abandoned barn. Oh, how the place was hot. Almost 40 degrees Celsius. When I reached the barn, after 5 or 6 minutes of walking, I found its doors open. The place was dark, and the light buttons near the entrance didn't work. I used a cheap flashlight I bought along the way. There were dozens of cars abandoned in there, including a school bus. The school bus my wife was in when she disappeared. I entered it as fast as I could, but it was empty, and full of bugs and dust. And that's when I heard it. Screaming. Kids screaming. I wish they were ghosts like previous times, but sadly they weren't. I followed the sound and found a stair leading to the underground. I'd usually try to spare you from the gruesome details, but this time I can't, so if you can't handle gory stuff, be careful with this chapter. There were at least 100 people down there. Most of them had their legs and arms cut. Some of them were clearly dead and decomposing, and some of them were alive but couldn't move. The absolute majority of these people had pieces of their skin missing, and some of them also had no eyes, ears, or noses. Some people were hanging from the ceiling. They had hooks on their shoulders. No eyes. Their mouths and ears were sewn shut. Their arms and legs were cut. No hair, and all of their genitalia were removed. The only thing showing me they were alive was their breathing. Purified, is that you? Will you kill me already? An eyeless kid with no legs or scalp asked me, crawling with their arms. I couldn't tell if they were male or female. What the fuck is happening here? I shouted. I couldn't hold myself anymore, and then I looked to the ceiling above me. There she was, my wife. Be careful! A man with no legs in the corner of the room shouted. I looked around and saw a man wearing a doctor's coat and a mask, made completely of skin, coming down the stairs with a scalpel in his gloved hands. Well, I thought it was a mask. When he got closer, I saw his face. It was full of scars, and with several different skin tones. He wore no mask. Thought you could sneak into my office? He said, pointing his scalpel at me. At that moment, I was pretty sure I was going to die, so I had no option but to run away. He came after me, still holding that damn scalpel. I'll fix your skin too, he shouted. Well, usually the protagonist gets away in these situations, but I smoked for several years and was pretty tired after all of those days of no sleep. He perforated my back a couple times and kicked my leg, tumbling me to the ground. Why are you doing this? I asked, as he was getting ready to stab me one final time. Each mole, each wart, each birthmark is a mortal sin in our skins. I purify myself by getting them out of our skins, he said, pointing to the different skin tones and scars in his body. I'll save myself by getting all the pure skins and putting them in my own. That is the only way to get to heaven. Thank God I brought my lighter with me. When he got distracted talking about his delusions, I set his coat on fire and ran away. You idiot! You're ruining my perfect skin, he cried, as the fire spread throughout his body. I ran to my car, hearing his angry footsteps behind me. I dared to look back. A good portion of his body was on fire, but that wasn't stopping him. I had almost reached my car, but I started to fail. My lungs were aching, even with the adrenaline. I wish I never put a cigarette in my mouth. Gotcha! He screamed, as he tried to stab my chest. He stabbed me, but the scalpel got stuck in my chest. I used my basic brawling skills to punch his face and knock him down. I kicked his face 2 or 3 times just in case. He was knocked out. I'm not stupid. I didn't remove the scalpel. I didn't want to go through all that trouble just to bleed to death. So I carried on, even with the pain. It was difficult picking my wife up from the hook and putting her in my car, but I did it. I could see her accelerated breathing. She was terrified. Her eyes, tongue, eardrums, skin, and limbs were removed. She only knew someone was carrying her, and only wasn't crying out of fear because she didn't have her eyes anymore. I couldn't help myself. I walked to where the killer was lying, got his cell phone, called the cops, threw it away, and entered my car. I ran over his legs 3 times, just in case he woke up and tried to flee. Bit of poetic justice. And then I drove off toward the fortress. I reached the ruins at 23:45 of the same day. I went straight to the pit with my wife's body in my arms. She was so thin I could see her bones. I remember Supei's words from earlier. If you call that living. He was right. My wife was dead. This wasn't life. But if Supei is a god of death, maybe he could give her life too. I just had to hope he wouldn't lie to me, that he would bring her back. You did better than I expected, son, Supei said from his throne. There wasn't a chorus of hooded people this time, just me, my wife, and him, if we can call that him. I'm so tired. Please give her back to me, I said, sobbing. I was almost sleeping, feeling my eyes closing. But the will to save my wife was bigger. Remember our deal, Javier. We are not friends, just business partners. I need something from you, and if you give it to me, she'll be back to you, with all her rip parts intact. What do you need? I asked, feeling the tears going down my cheeks. I need you to kill Arnaldo Celeste. Excuse me? Arnaldo Celeste, the representative of the South American branch of the Foundation. The foundation? Which one? You're not stupid, Javier. You know which one I'm talking about. Arnaldo sent you a letter 2 days ago. Don't you remember? Go to his office and kill him. He won't be prepared for that, and will succumb easily. Your wife will be back to you if you do that. And what if I don't? In this case, not only will I not give your wife back, I'll also put you in the same situation as her, living in eternal darkness, alone, scared, not feeling anything, and worst of all, alive. So, when you finish your 10 days, go there and kill him. And just in case you don't believe, I can bring your wife back. He moved his hand in a strange manner, and I felt a small pain on my chest and back. The scalpel had disappeared, and the stabbing injuries were healed. After that, I just went home. I didn't say anything. I was so tired, I couldn't. The radio was saying something about a serial killer being arrested in the countryside. I couldn't care less. I just needed to sleep. I'll update you after I finish sleeping.
Off.
I arrived at work at 14:10, a bit after the start of my shift at 10 o'clock, but by that point I didn't care. It was raining, so we had far less tourists than common. Actually, we had uncommon tourists. There was a group of men with fedora hats, sunglasses, and black suits collecting things from the supervisor's cabin and talking to Hector. He had a different uniform on that day. "Hey, what's going on?" I said as I noticed those people were installing cameras all over the place. "Your level of clearance is not high enough for me to explain, Javier." "What?" Just kidding. We're installing cameras because the paranormal activity has increased significantly in the last week. Probably the all-time highest. If it gets worse, we're probably going to close the dangerous areas of the site. Hector, what's with your suit? I was promoted. I'm your supervisor now. What happened to... Oh. Shit. Yeah. It sometimes happens in our line of business. I'm used to it. Javier, when the men in black are gone, come to my office. I need your help with something again. He said. I tried to say something too, but he was called by one of the men in black and entered his office. 3 hours later, the suited people left. I entered Hector's office, a bit nervous. Last time I did what he wanted, I had a whole lot of trouble with the night inhabitants. He was sitting at his desk with a joint in his mouth and looking at some files. All of them had that same weird symbol of a circle and arrows I'd seen earlier. Some of them were clearly curriculums marked with the words verified below the concurrent photo. Why didn't you come to work yesterday, Javier? He said, with smoke coming out of his mouth. I didn't realize I didn't work the previous day. I spent all day rescuing my wife from that freak and then taking her to Supe. Why did the police find all the people in the bus but your wife? I don't know. I know you denounced the killer and ran over his legs, Javier. I know you took your wife with you. I honestly don't care where you took her. I just need to know one thing. How the fuck did you know she was there? He finished his joint. The demon is doing all of this, right? Don't believe him. He's lying to you. It's too dangerous for me to say anything more here. Can we talk in the safe room or outside the ruins? Okay. At shift's end, meet me in the cafeteria. Same one from last time at the city. Don't talk to anyone about this, and don't risk your life until you've talked with me. Something extremely bad is happening here in this place. I noticed he was already smoking another joint and had a worried expression. Well, nothing paranormal happened at first. The talk among everyone was about the barn mutilator, or whatever they called that maniac. Ironically, half of his skin was burned, and they had to amputate one of his legs. The police eventually called my phone. They said they needed to talk to me. But the only thing I didn't understand is why anyone hadn't mentioned to the police I had rescued my wife and taken her away. Anyway, half an hour before my shift ended, I was drinking a cup of coffee. Samir and Victoria suddenly entered the cuadrilla. Javier, we know this is a hard subject, and you're leaving in 3 days, but we want to say we're sorry, Victoria said. I never saw her so engaged to a conversation before. Yeah, I also lost a family member 10 years ago. I know how hard it is. I'm sorry, Samir said. I didn't know how to answer them. We're sorry about your wife, Samir said. But she disappeared years ago, folks. She's probably still alive. That maniac from the barn didn't kill all of them. Oh, so we're the first ones to deliver the news, right? When Victoria said that, I had the sudden urge to throw up. I left the cuadrilla in angst, in shock and denial, ignoring them talking behind me. No, that couldn't be true. It couldn't. That motherfucker from the pit had tricked me. This can't be true, I said, sobbing, and fell to the grass like a stupid child. And then I heard footsteps behind me. I looked back. A very tall, completely white, faceless, humanoid creature was coming straight in my direction from the middle of nowhere. It was just walking, slowly. I immediately ran to the security shack where Samir and Victoria were. Hey, guys, what is that? The tears of horror were replacing those of sadness. There's nobody there, Javier. Are you okay? Samir asked. Maybe it's the shock, Victoria said while playing Candy Crush. No, Wait. There was a rule in the special security measures. I closed the door with my key and opened my manual. Measurements. Yes, they used the wrong word, Samir said. Oh, it's the stalker, Javier. He never showed up to an employee so recently hired before. Did you break rules or annoy whatever it is behind all this? Victoria asked. I don't know. Shit. Why can't I talk to our supervisor or go into the safe? I was about to finish that sentence when the safe room door was broken to pieces, and a person wearing what seemed like an ancient mining suit came out. What the fuck? They've never invaded the cuadrilla before, Samir said with obvious panic in his voice. Damn cell phones, the miner said. He had a pickaxe in his hands. Victoria barely had time to react. I opened and jumped out the window while Samir escaped through the door. I couldn't follow his route. The stalker was on it. I saw the hooded people again, but this time they weren't so peaceful. They were menacingly walking in my direction. I ran to my car, listening to Victoria's screams of agony in the distance. When I reached the parking lot, only Samir's, Victoria's, and my car were there. Samir wasn't there yet, and the way he took was far faster than the one I had to take. I looked back a final time, I think hoping to see him, but I didn't. I just saw the miner, covered in blood, running after me. I entered the car and immediately started it, seeing him come closer and closer. And then I stomped on the accelerator. I looked back to see if I had managed to get rid of him. There was a pickaxe carved in the vehicle ceiling. Even after getting rid of those monsters, or whatever they were, I still felt a weird feeling, a weird presence with me. I tried to resist it for almost an hour, but I failed, and looked to the car's internal mirror. In the back seat, completely naked, was my wife. You were going to betray me with Hector, weren't you? She had Supei's voice. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I braked quickly and left my car, walking without direction in the foggy night road. I heard an old man laughing behind me. He was already at my side. "Oh, poor Javi boy, what are you going to do now? Get into the safe room? It was destroyed. Call your supervisor? I killed her. And even if someone replaces her, you can't contact them when I unleash the stalker. It's in the rules," he said, trying to contain his laughter. I turned around to look at him, and he was in his classical form this time. I assume that's his true one. "Didn't you want me to kill Celeste? I didn't do anything. I didn't betray you. Why are you doing all of this? Please, I just want to work 10 days and leave," I said, no longer holding the tears. "Yes, it was going to be so funny. You were going to kill Celeste just to find out your wife was dead all along, and then I'd bury you with her. Or resuscitate her and kill her again in front of your eyes. But you ruined it all." He seemed extremely angry, but enjoying every single moment of it. "Then who will kill him for you, you fucking asshole?" I asked, no longer sad or scared, but furious. I never needed you to do anything. I can do it all myself. I was just feeling lazy. But your near betrayal angered me enough to make me get up and... He was suddenly run over by a car and thrown away. Samir, with half of his face covered in blood, opened the door. He didn't need to tell me anything. I was already in. The car sprinted through the road at least 3 times the higher maximum speed. "I've already called Hector. He'll get in contact with his chief," Samir said, concentrated on the road. "I hope he's fast enough. If he's not, the janitors and tourists will show up at the mountain tomorrow." "We should focus on surviving, Javier. That thing is coming after us. All of us." "He's not that powerful outside the mountain, is he? Is there anywhere for us to hide?" "I don't know. Only Hector's organization knows about that, and I'm not a member. He got offended when I refused to join and stopped talking to me. Probably he just picked up the phone because he's the supervisor now. Then I need to ask him. Don't. The stalker is after you. Get rid of him first. I'm taking you to the nearest cemetery." It's almost day 8 now, although I don't believe I'll get to work anymore. I'm using the time I have before we arrive at the cemetery to write this. Wish me luck. I knocked on the door, wearing old, dirty clothing. It still had the horrible smell of its previous owner. My face was covered in bruises, and half of Samir's face was ripped. He was by my side. Hector opened his door and looked at us. He was wearing pajamas and had a cigarette in his mouth. We stared at each other for almost a full minute. "So, what do we do?" I asked. He seemed as scared as we were. Come in, please." He let us enter his house and led us to the dining table. I could hear his wife and child snoring inside the other rooms. "So, where's Victoria?" Hector asked, as he served cocoa tea to us. "She's gone," Samir said, with a bit of melancholy in his voice. "Fuck. How did that happen? Did she disobey the rules?" Hector asked, clearly worried. "No, a giant miner came out of the safe room and killed her with a pickaxe," Samir answered. God, the safe room stopped working? Damn, on my first day as supervisor. "Hector, what do we do? Please, tell us the Foundation knows how to stop that demon. Maybe the paper I gave you had instructions? Please." I pleaded to him. "No, the Inquisition couldn't find a way to get rid of the Samipada evil, so they only left. I'm afraid there is no known way to get rid of him," Hector answered. "Maybe there's some kind of ancient Inca ritual? He'll kill us all, Hector. Samir said. Actually, there may be a way. There's a very old woman in the city's nursing home. In my childhood, they said she had mystical powers. She's over 90 years old. I don't know if she'll be helpful, he said. Are they open at night? We can go there, Samir said. Yes, and please, tell me he's with you. Hector pointed to a person who was watching us from the window. It was just a silhouette hidden by the curtains. No, he's not, I said, then noticed a familiar sound. My car has a minor problem in one of its tires, and that problem is responsible for producing a weird sound whenever my car speeds around 120 kilometers per hour. And then I remembered I had abandoned my car on the road. Isn't that speed too fast for this small town? Samir asked. Yes, Hector said. Suddenly, my car somehow crashed into the house, and I fell to the floor. I got up as fast as I could, even with some bruises and my eyesight a bit blurry. Oh, hello! Am I late to the party? The silhouette said as he entered the house, slowly assuming the form of Supe. Behind him on the street, I could see dozens of stalkers coming in our direction. Up to 50, maybe. Honey, what's happening? Hector's wife shouted as she left her room a bit sleepy. A huge tentacle emerged out of Supe's back and grabbed her by the neck. No! Hector shouted. He was stuck under one of my car's wheels. I could also hear children crying. I assumed they were his kids, but I didn't see them. Oh, do you need me to call your mommy, Hector? Supe said. Suddenly, he had the face of an old woman. Supe, release her! It's me that you want! I shouted. Are you nuts, Javier? He'll kill you! Samir said. He was on the other side of the room and seemed to have a broken leg. Supe released the woman and looked at me with his large, black, dead eyes. Let's make a new deal, son. I will stop my violence, but in exchange you will bring 3 souls to me per lunar cycle. Maybe that is the deal, Javier. You do it or you die. It's your choice. Suddenly, Supe stumbled, but managed to remain standing. He had been shot in the head by Hector. I will hold him! Run away! Hector shouted, with the revolver in his hand. I did what he said, and ran as fast as I could, hearing Hector's screams of agony and pain. I entered Samir's car. There was a huge line of stalkers in the way. I had no option but to risk myself. The street had only one way out. I accelerated the car and went through the horde of stalkers. Some of them started to climb on the car's roof. Others were punching at the windows and trying to break the windshield. I just closed my eyes and carried on. I wished they were all gone. I wish I never took this job. I wish my wife never went into that school bus, and carried on. I opened my eyes again. The stalkers were still surrounding my car, slowing it down more and more. Their hands starting to shatter the car's structure, but I carried on. One of their absurdly sharp fingernails scratched my cheek, but I carried on. Eventually the car regained its speed, and I accelerated out of that horde of stalkers. They were incredibly strong, and one of them even managed to hold my car for a few seconds before I got myself free. I knew where the old people's shelter was. I just needed to get there. The only remaining mirror of the car showed the stalkers running after me. After some 15 minutes, I arrived at the nursing home. I thought none of the stalkers were well behind, but none of them were holding onto the car. Oh, how wrong I was. The exact moment I left my car, one stalker came out of the trunk and ran in my direction. I burst into the nursing home and barred the glass door with a nearby wardrobe. Are you insane? The receptionist said. I hope not. Can't you see that thing? I shouted as I pointed to the stalker who was throwing himself at the door. What? She asked, confused and probably scared. Where is the old woman? The oldest? Sir, you're invading this establishment. I can't let you talk to Mr. Skaruda. I'll have to call the police. She was suddenly grabbed by two stalker hands that emerged from a window behind her and pulled her outside. I wasted no more time. I ran through the place's corridors until I found Garuda's bedroom. All the doors had the name of their inhabitants, so it wasn't very difficult. Mr. Skaruda, I said. She was sleeping, so I kind of woke her up. Oh, what's happening? She asked, still in her bed. I need your help, I said as I locked the door and threw a random table in front of it. Luckily, there were no windows inside. How can I help you? I can't even move my legs anymore, the old woman said. I walked to the side of her bed, hearing that the things were trying to break the door. Listen, a friend of mine said you have mystical powers. I need your help. Supe released himself out of the Samipata fortress. Do you know any way to stop him? Please, he's already here, I said as the scratching on the door became even more intense. I never had mystical powers. I just have a few advantages. That's why I'm still alive after 110 years. Which advantages? I asked. Scratching was replaced by heavy punches. My grandfather. He was not a common man. He was the Samipata's mountain Apu, probably still alive. You said Supe is coming from the Inca fortress. If that is happening, it is because my grandfather allowed him to use his mountain. I assume you don't know much of Inca mythology, right? Actually, no. I'm not from here. Yes, I could feel it. You're from the land of the Guardians. Suddenly the punches on the door stopped. This made me even more tense. Please, explain the mythology to me. I need your help. I heard the creatures going away from the door. It was certainly planning something. Each mountain has their own Apu, a ruler of the mountain. See, in Inca mythology, the mountain's caves were portal to other realms. The only way for Supe to leak into this realm is through a portal. And he can only use a portal if the mountain's Apu lets him do it. It sounded like insane gibberish to me, but my situation was far from sans. Please, tell me, how do I convince your grandfather to stop Supe? How do I find your grandfather? I implored. I heard a weird noise and looked back. A weird, black liquid was infiltrating the room from under the door. The only way to contact him is if you enter the cave and call his name. His name is Yipanki Toko. He used to live in one of the waterfalls of Las Cuevas. But if Supe is after you, you'll never make it there. How did you enrage him so much? I didn't do very much. He thought I was going to betray him, but I wasn't going to. It didn't stop him from snapping and killing everyone he saw. Long time he doesn't do that. Well, see you in Hanan Pacha. I'll go back to my sleep now. She closed her eyes and turned to the other side. I took a deep breath, removed the table and opened the door, and burst out of the room. In front of me was one of the hooded people I had seen a few days before. He had a pitchfork in his hand, and he was going to attack me with it, aiming for my head. I used one of my hands to stop it. I've never screamed so much in my life. One of my fingers fell to the floor, and there was now a bleeding hole in my hand. I pushed the monsters away and ran to the building's entrance. However, the entrance was already surrounded by stalkers. I looked over the place, not finding another door to escape, but I found something else. The window that the first stalker used to pull the secretary away was open. I used the secretary's table and jumped through it, falling into a dark and dirty alleyway. However, there was a bike there. I mounted it and started riding from the place through the alleyways. I pedaled with the bicycle through the dark alleyways of the city, hearing the hordes of stalkers chasing me. I needed to talk to that mountain spirit the old woman mentioned, but I wouldn't make it to the mountain if I tried to go there on a bike. I still had a last resort. I didn't know if it would work, but I was desperate. I entered the police station thunderously. accidentally awaking the officer responsible for the night shift. "What the?" he shouted as I threw the first thing I found in front of the door. There were already 2 stalkers visible in the yellowed and old streetlights. "I need help. Not much time for explaining. I'm being followed by a demon or something, and he's trying to kill me. He's already killed a lot of people," I said, not knowing how to explain the situation in a simple way. "Are you nuts? Have you really awakened me at..." He looked at his watch. 3:15 a.m. just for crazy gibberish. Sir, are you insane? He suddenly stopped shouting when he looked at the street through the windows. There were hundreds of stalkers all over the street, coming toward us. And amidst them, an enormous creature, with what seemed like insect legs. It was hard to see in the dark. The policeman immediately got on his phone and started calling his boss. "Sir, we've got a kind of a situation here. There are hundreds of..." He was constantly blinking. It looked like he was trying to wake himself from that weird dream. "Monsters coming toward the station and a giant insect. I don't know. Please, sir, I'm serious. No, why would I let... I've never pranked any..." He put the phone back in its place and gave me a look. In a single expression, he transmitted frustration, fright, fear, anger, and grief. Both of us knew we weren't going to get any help, and we were on our own. "Please, tell me you're pranking me with the other cops, or a reality show. I've never asked you for anything," he pleaded. "I'd love to tell you that. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening," I said as I tried to close all the windows. "When I was a child, Granny would tell me the old tales of the demons from the prison. The Inca were so afraid of the devil they literally worshipped him and asked him not to harm them. She said because the cults stopped, they would eventually be revolted and come for us. I never believed it, but always took her advice. If that is what's happening." He said that the stalkers started to surround the station, battering on the windows and doors and climbing the outside walls. "Sir, I don't think telling stories is going to help us." "It won't, but this will." He showed me a really old pistol. It was stuffed with what was clearly llama fur. This belonged to my family for generations. It was made with the fur of Uruchile. "What? How long have you been living here? He is the god of llamas, the animals that protect us from evil spirits." He loaded the gun and got up and went straight to the window. He was not terrified anymore. He was angered by the spirits of his grandmother's tales, the spirits that threatened to destroy his life. I covered my ears and hoped for everything to be fine. He started shooting. Some of the stalkers were falling down, but there were too many. The officer didn't give up, though, and when he paused to recharge his gun, I heard laughter by my side. Funny, right? He really thinks he'll be able to shoot me down. I looked to my side. Sitting on the station's balcony was Supe, now wearing a bizarre policeman suit covered in blood. "Officer! Officer!" I shouted, almost falling backward because of the fright. "Oh!" the officer shouted, turning to Supe and shooting him at least 10 times. The bullets hit the demon, making holes all over his torso, from where a weird mix of golden and gray blood started to outpour. I closed my eyes and braced myself, waiting for a murderous outburst, but instead I just heard laughter. Supe was almost falling to the floor due to laughter. All the stalkers outside were also laughing, and some of them didn't even have mouths. "Did you seriously think that you could kill me, Carlos? Seriously? You're so dumb. You're so dumb. Don't you know policemen aren't supposed to shoot suspects?" Supe laughed. He was really having a great time. All the stalkers were still laughing. "Mercy, please, I beg." The policeman kneeled down. "I'm sick of this." I took the weapon from his hands and shot all the bullets I could. I'm a security guard, so I know how to shoot. I just didn't expect to be better than a police officer. I put several bullets in Supei's face. The bullets made his body fall backwards, and although the stalkers were still laughing, the demon wasn't anymore. "I'm disappointed in you, son." I heard his voice coming from beneath me. And then I felt like I was shaking. No, everything was shaking. The earthquake alarm echoed throughout the entire town. Cracks appeared on the streets, and hands started to climb from them, and the light on all the houses started to turn on. The stalkers looked to the source of the lights, and then I heard the screams. From all the people, old, young, men, women. It was slaughter. Supei was slaughtering the entire town. I stood there in shock when something greasy grabbed one of my legs. It was Supei, but not cosplaying bizarre snuff film versions of policemen, miners, emperors, or guards. He was now just a formless and really huge pile of meat, grease, blood, viscera, limbs and faces with expressions of horror, all soaked in that weird golden gray liquid. "Nope!" I shot his hand with the weapon and it retreated, but 3 more came from the mist. "Citizen! We can escape with the car!" The policeman waved at me, pointing to the patrol car parked outside. The stalkers were all distracted, so we should be able to get there. The cop tried to unlock the door so we could exit, but the huge mess that Supei made impersonated a growl, and tentacles grabbed him by the neck. He threw the cars to me before they broke his neck and started tearing his head to pieces. I jumped through the window, firmly holding the weapon, and ran to the police car. It wasn't difficult getting inside, and the car started off pretty fast. Supei was exiting the station, breaking all the walls and glass. The tentacles were coming from the floor, tearing the nearby buildings apart. I accelerated, going around the cracks in the streets and hit the road. There, I saw people running everywhere, and even more bizarre monsters chasing them. And then I saw it. On the sky among the clouds illuminated by the moon were helicopters, all of them with that weird logo from Hector's organization. Not shortly after that, all the radios went dead, and my cell phone stopped functioning. I ignored everything. I'd do what the woman from the nursing home told me to do. Find the Samipata Apu and convince him to stop Supei. When I parked the car next to Las Cuevas, just as I left the police car, I heard several noises coming from the city. The entire city was being destroyed by tentacles, and the helicopters were shooting them with what seemed like weird plasma bullets. I couldn't determine exactly who was winning or losing, and every time I try to recall, my memory gets more and more blurry. Anyway, I went straight into the caves, feeling the water going all the way up to my knees. I hoped my eyes could guide me well in the darkness. Not even my cell phone's flashlight was working anymore. In fact, it had stopped working the moment I saw the helicopters. That's why I almost fell to the floor from fright when the radio started playing flamenco music in the loudest manner possible. I was already used to Supei's madness, so I quickly recomposed myself and kept walking in the muddy water. That scare told me something. Supei knew I was here, but he didn't appear immediately, so he was either planning a big entry or was busy somewhere else. Maybe he was trying to scare me. Well, that was a terrible jump scare. I kept the pace, entering the cave complex and feeling the cold water falling on my head and shoulders. I had been to Las Cuevas before, but under completely different circumstances. I went there with my wife on our first holiday in Bolivia, and the waterfalls were beautiful. Now everything was just weird. There were no people bathing in the water, just me, alone, at a cave in a mountain. But the place felt different too, a bit off. It was the same feeling of unease I felt in the car just a few hours before. There was something there with me, but it wasn't in the back seat this time. No, the entire car was coming behind me. I looked back, seeing it drive behind me, slower than my pace, drowning its wheels on the water and with its lights turned on. The lights offset my eyes in the darkness, and I couldn't see who was driving. The flamenco music was still playing, but in a very lowered tone this time. I had the urge to throw myself to the side, feeling that the car was going to come in all its speed and shatter me to pieces. Surprisingly, it didn't. I stopped walking, and the vehicle stopped too. I started walking again, and so did it. It felt like the car was imitating me. Was it? I'm sorry, I'm subtly having a hard time recalling what happened. I've been locked in this room for 2 or 3 days, and just today they let me use my cell phone. Every day these people in white jackets and black suits come, make interviews, and inject me with these weird things. Oh, I remember now. I was scared, but I didn't have much more to lose by that point, so I approached the car and looked into the windshield, where I could see it better. It was entirely empty. I'm not joking. Even the seats had disappeared, and it was filled with water. Now, how was that even possible? Are you just going to stand there? I heard someone saying behind me. I was prepared for yet another of Soupé's madnesses, but when I turned back, there was a formal dinner table standing in the middle of the water. It was visibly old, with some Baroque ornaments. There were seats, too. Actually, the car's seats. Sitting in one of them was a... What was sitting there? My memory gets more and more blurry. Since one of those weird helicopters flashed me, I can't remember. What can't I remember? Wait, I remember. Sitting in one of those seats was a man, wearing a nice, old-fashioned suit and top hat. A really old-fashioned suit. It seemed like they took it straight out of a 19th century film. There were 6 buttons in that suit, and a white bow tie. The illumination was made by the car's headlights, and the car's radio was making background music. On the table, there were several fruits, cheeses, Parma ham, wine served in goblets, scrambled eggs, cocoa leaves, and several other foods. His face was the weirdest thing. He had the face of a lion, but with several horns in various parts of it. On his mouth was hanging a smoking pipe. I didn't know what you liked, so I just kind of brought everything. I could immediately tell that it wasn't Soupé. His voice, although not comforting, was much more gentle, and his clothing wasn't made of rotten flesh and didn't have a single bloodstain. You're the Mountain Apu? Yupan Kitoko, right? He interrupted me. Take a seat. I'm hungry. Although he was giving me an order, he was being very gentle. I took my seat and looked at the food. I expected them to be illusions or rotten, but they seemed perfectly fine. Don't worry, I'm not poisoning you. If I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead the first day you stepped foot on my mountain, Toko said as he ate an entire apple with a single bite. I don't know how he managed to store so many teeth in his mouth. I nodded and started to put the scrambled eggs on my plate. It was actually delicious. I started to eat excitedly all the food, the apples, the cocoa tea, the wines, the cheese. It was all so delicious I felt like I was in a restaurant. The weirdest restaurant ever. Javier, you're the first one here in a long time that isn't Soupé, he said as he drank one of the wines. What? I think it's time I gave you some explanation. Well, as my granddaughter told you, I am the physical manifestation of this mountain. Back at the time of the Inca Empire, all mountains had their own Apu to protect them. Now, few of us remain. What? Aren't you all immortal? Yes. They left. Most of us were forgotten, so many left to live common lives, pretending to be human or went to the other realms. I myself have never tried. Also, a human life for a bit during the 19th century. That's where I got this glorious suit. But you humans expire too early, and working is so boring. so I ended up coming back to my mountain. But why are you letting Supe walk around? He's been doing atrocities for centuries. There must be hundreds of deaths already. He has killed or influenced in the death of exactly 29,316 people since he began his thing 1,500 years ago. Each time he killed, he gifted me with the thing I care most in this world. Gold. Company for a delicious breakfast. Is there anything better? Wait, you let him kill all those people just so you could have someone to eat breakfast with you. It's not that simple. I can make one of you humans sit with me and eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But then everyone would just keep endlessly trying to flatter me. And when someone is just agreeing with everything you say, well then, that's not real conversation. That's why Supe was so good to have a conversation with. That guy is completely unpredictable. In fact, on my 2,000th birthday, he presented me with paella. When I ate it, it felt odd. I stopped eating it, thinking maybe he had accidentally cooked rotten food, but later the same day, I went to town to bang one of the hot chicks there, and one of my pregnant girlfriends was found completely eviscerated, and with her 7-month fetus missing. Turns out he put my offspring in my food. Supe was awesome, he said, laughing. And what did you do to him? I asked, sincerely horrified. I did the same thing to him when a girl got pregnant from him some decades later. We kind of turned it into a tradition until we got bored of it. But that's not why I've welcomed you here. It's because I'm actually tired of him. He keeps killing more and more people, and that makes me have more and more meals together. And I'm so fucking tired of seeing that psycho face every morning. So 3 years ago, I gave him a free pass to do whatever he wanted out here and use the pits as many times as he wanted, but once he finished his thing, he'd have to have just as many meals with me as people he killed. And use the free pass he did. The guy just killed the half of the fucking town down there, and there's no way I'm having over 2,000 breakfasts with him, Yupanqui said as he smoked his pipe. So you want me to replace him? Yes, I want you to come every Sunday and have breakfast with me, but I don't want you to treat me like a god like those morons down there used to. I want you to treat me like a friend. Be sincere with me. Do we have a deal, Javier? Wait, you let that psycho kill all of those people just so you could have breakfast with someone? Yes? Holy fuck, why are all you gods so insane? Yes, that's what I wanted. You see? Sincerity. Oh, our friendship is going to last so long. Until you die. Or I get bored of you, Then I'm just going to burn you alive or something. Anyway, have a nice week, and... Oh, yes, I've already locked up Supe. Well, must leave now. Your human friends are coming. He simply dived in the water and disappeared, even though the water was just at my knees and he was at least 3 meters tall. I heard the helicopters approaching, and my memory starts to get super blurry around there. I remember leaving the caves and seeing the men in black descending from the helicopters. I could see the city, too. The tentacles were being pulled back into the soil, and I saw, through now enormous cracks all over town, a gigantic beast, much bigger than even the mountain, screaming in pain and burning in fire. No, it wasn't pain. It was rage. Hatred. And I looked at the helicopters. That's when they flashed me. I don't remember much from what happened next. I remember waking in a weird hospital. A lot of people I knew from town were being treated. All of them were unconscious. Hector was there. Half of Hector was there. He was lying on a hammock, but his legs were not. And nor one of his eyes and hands. His belly was entirely open and full of bites. I knew you'd do it, kid, he said with a smile on his face. I don't remember what I replied. I never saw him again after that either. They locked me in here and have been interviewing me ever since I arrived, giving me medicines. 3 or 4 hours ago, a man wearing a black suit, sunglasses, and with a not entirely bald head, with what was clearly a Brazilian accent, came into my room, gave me my cell phone, and told me, "The O5 have approved you as the new site director, or, as they like to call these people in the museum, supervisor. We are still studying how you did it, but you somehow managed to contain the anomaly by yourself. We will give you more details in 2 or 3 days after we've finished fixing the mess in the town." "Wait, what?" He interrupted me. "No, you cannot deny your new job. You are free to use your cell phone one last time. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a new one, along with a new identity." Before I could ask him anything, he simply left. I can't even remember his name, even with it on his badge. No. Wait, I think I remember it now. It was Arnaldo Celeste, I think. Was he the guy Supe ordered me to kill? Well, doesn't matter anymore. I think I'm going to be staying in the ruins a lot more than I previously thought. And as always, boys and girls, thank you for watching. If you liked today's story, give it a thumbs up. To hear more stories like this one, hit the subscribe button, making sure you turn on that bell for notifications of when I publish new stories every Tuesday and Thursday. To support this channel, click the link for our Patreon in the description box below. Until next time, sweet dreams.